Stick around to the very end for a couple bonus facts. Welcome back to the Knife Chats. If you're familiar with my channel, you're probably aware that I like the knives used by the United States Army Air Force and the United States Air Force. And I've done a few videos on those already, and I was promising to do one a while ago, and so it's time to do that. And that is for this big beauty here, the Army Air Force folding machete. Now, what I plan on doing is talking about what this is, what it isn't, and then talk about a little bit of how it came about. So let's talk about how this folding machete came about. In the beginning of World War II, the United States Air Force, or United States Army Air Force at the time, was using the number 18 Collins machete, this picture right here, as their knife for their emergency kit. And as you can tell, machete is kind of a misnomer. It's actually just a really big Bowie knife. In fact, it has about a 10-inch blade, and the overall length of it is about 16 inches long. And it looks awesome. It looked awesome in World War II also. And what was happening is every pilot, every crew member, every Air Force personnel you can imagine was taking those Collins machetes out of the emergency kit and strapping it to their leg. I mean, who wouldn't? It's an awesome looking Bowie knife. So the Air Force is having a major problem keeping them in the emergency kit. More importantly though, they were also really big, 16 inches long, took up a lot of space, and the Air Force needed something smaller. And this is especially true when they were trying to get those emergency kits a little smaller so that you know, when you're bailing out, you're not bailing out with such a big thing. And so the Air Force came out with a specification for a new folding style machete. Now, I don't know the exact specification number for this, but I do know the specification number for the Air Corps drawing for it was S42-D 7462. Yep, I'm reading that. S42-D 7462. So is this the S42-D 7462? I don't really know. I know that was the drawing specification number that the Army Air Corps gave to the various manufacturers of the knife. Now, from what I can understand, the three companies that actually made the knife were Camillus, Cartaragus, and Case. This particular one is by Case. I don't have information on what number Case assigned to this, but I do know that Camillus assigned the number 5678 L-35. So as far as Camillus was concerned, this was the L-35, and a lot of people refer to this as the L-35, but most people just call it the Army Air Force folding machete because it's a folding machete. So let's take a look at this and exactly how it folds, what it is, and everything else now. Now, the first thing you notice is there's no scabbard or sheath for this thing. This is the way it was actually issued. It came in the emergency kit as you're seeing it here. And it folds. The handle is here, it folds. The handle is about 5 or so inches long when it's open. And then you've got a blade that's about, I think 9.5, 10 inches. I'll write the specification numbers in there. And what you have on it is this blade guard. If I can get it off without cutting myself. You got a blade guard that goes over the blade so that when it is closed. So here you have the full open knife or machete, and you see here on it, we can get it to show, Case XX. That's the only marking you see on this. The Camillus one reads Camillus and the Cartaragus ones read Cartaragus. What you notice is it is carbon steel throughout. Pins, cross guard, blade, everything on it, 1095 carbon steel, a very strong liner lock going, and then the handles are made of a composition material. I think it might be called GNU, but it is basically an extremely hard plastic. Now, the reason they went with this hard plastic is these were primarily used in the South Pacific, and they needed something that was rot proof, mildew proof, and everything else, and that's why the handle is the way it is. The reason everything is stainless steel is because these are made in 1942, not stainless steel, I'm sorry. Reason it is all carbon steel is because it's made in 1942, and brass was at a premium being used for ammunition and such. So everything on this is steel, carbon steel. Very strong liner lock. I'm going to put the cover back on before I try to close it, because you really do not want to try and close this with the blade open or with the cover off of the blade. It is not easy to close. It's a very strong lock, and I believe that's the case on all of them, but you'll hear those snap. And when you bring it open, very positive snap. Thing locks like you would not believe. No wobble in the blade or anything else, despite being, well, from 1942. Now these things, the cover were initially painted black. The blade were just plain steel. You know, they did not parkerize them or anything else. It was in the emergency kit. And this is basically what you have: Camillus, Carteragus, and Case. Now some people say that these were also made by Kinfolk. That may be, but until I see one with Kinfolk actually stamped on the blade and they can prove that it was made in World War II, I seriously doubt it, because every resource I've seen says that the big three, Camillus, Case, and Carteragus, made these. As for numbers, Camillus made about 114,000 of them in 1942, and they were contracted to make an additional 50,000 in 1944, but apparently the contract was not completed. They made, I believe, 47,400 in 1944. Again, I'm reading from right down here. And the other two companies made about the same number, so about 1/3 from Camillus, 1/3 from Case, and 1/3 from Carteragus. And all basically looked like this, because they were all going off of the same specification number, S42-D 7462 from the Army Air Force. Let me close it back up. If you notice here, the blade cover, just a thin piece of steel, and then it's capped over and then just tap welded in place. If you can grab the blade, it's much easier to close it, and there you have it all closed up. And like I said, these did not come with any kind of sheath or anything, so basically when you jumped out, you needed to find a big pocket to put it in or stick it in a belt or something, but this is the way it came. Now there's another one that you see out there by Imperial, and people pass it off as a World War II folding machete. That's not true. Not true at all. In fact, the Imperial one was not even used by the Army Air Force. Essentially, after World War II, the U.S. Air Force in 1947 started looking for a replacement for the folding machete, and they wanted one that had a guard that couldn't be lost, because that was the biggest problem with this. One of the reasons they didn't want a sheath or anything is so people wouldn't be hanging it on the side of their body, but you know, once you get out there and start using it and you lose this part, you kind of need a sheath for it. So they wanted something that had this part on the knife itself, so that when you close the blade, this would extend out and catch the blade. And Imperial came out with a design that was adopted by the U.S. Air Force in 1948, I believe, and that's the Imperial folding machete that you see often. A little bit, you'll see it looks, well, you can see right there in the picture, it looks very much like this, except it has an integral guard for the blade that when you close it, the blade is still protected. Which is a really cool idea, but the important thing to remember is that is not one that was actually used during World War II. It came out in 1948. It might have seen some service during the Korean War, but it did not see any service with the Army Air Force during World War II. Now let's go back to the Collins 18, the little picture you see up there. A lot of people look at that and they think, V44. No, it's a Collins number 18 machete. It's not the V44 buoy. In fact, there's no such thing really as a V44 buoy until Case creates it as a V44 buoy using the Collins number 18 as the pattern. And what actually started off as a V44 was actually this style of machete. Looks like this, except it doesn't fold, and that was the V44 non-folding machete that Case came out with right at the end of World War II. And it basically has the same dimensions as the folding machete, except it doesn't fold. So it's a full tang machete with a slightly different handle style, but the same bolo style blade, and you can see it up here. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about the Army Air Force folding machete used in World War II, beginning in 1942, late 1942 into 1943, and then continuing into Army Air Force service even after World War II until, well, actually until it completely got phased out sometime in the 50s. By then it was being used by the United States Army Air Force. I'm sorry, the United States Air Force, not the United States Army Air Force. In any case, hope that was helpful. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you really like the Case folding machete. Well, if you're still here, you're here for the bonus facts. Bonus fact number 1: if you notice the cover of the blade guard, it does not cover the entire sharp edge, so you need to be very careful with it, because otherwise you're going to cut yourself right there. Bonus fact number 2: these were primarily used in the Pacific Theater of Operation during World War II. They may have shown up in Italy. They were not used in Northwest Europe, and primarily because they were designed for use in the jungle and on the islands in the Pacific. And they were actually known by the Army Air Force crews and also the US Navy crews that used it as a jungle knife. They actually called it the jungle knife, or the folding jungle knife. They did not call it the Army Air Force folding machete. Moving on to bonus fact number 3. If you notice this handle, it is a solid handle. There is no holes or anything in it. But you may run across a few of these that actually have a hole drilled into the handle for a lanyard. And they're not going to be marked for Case, Camillus, or Cartaragus. In fact, they may not have any kind of mark on them at all. And that's because these were not used by the United States Army Air Force or the United States Navy. They were used by Commonwealth forces. The Australians and British forces also had this. They made it under contract based off of the folding machete used by the Army Air Force. And again, it was used in the Pacific, but they were made in Australia and in Great Britain for their bomber crews, and they wanted a lanyard hole in it, so they drilled a lanyard hole through the handle and attached the lanyard to it. Otherwise, it's exactly like this, but the tang is not going to be marked Case, Camillus, or Cartaragus. It may be marked Sheffield, or it may not be marked at all. But they are most likely genuine, just not American. They're either British or Australian. So there's the last of the bonus facts. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Nice talking to you. Talk to you again soon. Oh, and if you're wondering why so much interest in Air Force knives, well, my dad was in the Air Force. I grew up an Air Force brat, so I have a fond spot for the Air Force. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Knife Chats, and if you did, please like and share it with your friends. Comments are always welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. Hope to see you soon.